Hi guys, and welcome to the first episode of Warhammer High Elves, a new series where I'm aiming to look at the history of the High Elf race, how they play in Warhammer 8th edition under the new rule set that came out a couple of months ago, and I'm going to devote an episode to each unit type or character kind of slot available to a High Elf general. We'll hopefully showcase some of the older models that maybe some guys haven't seen out there, because Games Workshop don't do them in the range anymore. But I also showcase my collection and offer some tactical advice on how I would field those units in a High Elf force. So without further ado, High Elves. For me, the reason I've stuck with High Elves for as long as I have, about 15-16 years, is because of their history. For one of the races in Warhammer, they have a very long, broad, well-rounded history that there's not many races older than them. The Lizardmen are older than them, obviously Chaos, but other than that, the High Elves have such a long timeline to cover with their history, and they really do have their fingers in a lot of pies with a lot of the other races. For example, when the old ones, the Lizardmen, they had a gate they used to travel around, that collapsed, the Lizardmen kind of ballsed up a little bit there, and the High Elves stepped in, saved the day. A chap called Ainarian, who became their first Phoenix King, fought off the 4 greater demons from each major power at once and beat them. What a hero. So they've got a lot of history with kind of Lizardmen, but mostly demons and the powers of chaos. They obviously have a lot of history with their elven brethren. Wood Elves are elven settlers, high elven settlers in the old world, who were called back to Ulthuan, their island home, to fight, and when they were called back they decided not to go. So they ended up settling in the old world in Athel Loren and stayed there and later became the Wood Elves. So just a quick overview, that is the island home of Ulthuan. It's changed a little bit over the editions of Warhammer High Elves. Sometimes it's massive, as you can see here, that's the old world, basically the whole fantasy setting, and as an island it's pretty big, it's probably bigger than the Empire. In some of the newer editions it's smaller or it's closer to the Empire, but it's always an island. And it's always slapped down in the middle of the sea, basically. So their history with the Wood Elves is apparent. Their history with the Dark Elves, one of the Phoenix King's sons, Ainarian's son Malekith, basically started. The Dark Elves became evil, depending on your point of view, by joining the cult of Slanesh with his mother, rallying a group of supporters from Elven society. They would later become the Dark Elves, and they would get beaten and sent off of Ulthuan in a time called the Sundering, which is pivotal in High Elf history. They are now Dark Elves and live in Nagaroth, which is the continent to the north of Ulthuan. Basically, that borders the Chaos realm. Who else have we got? The High Elves obviously have a history with dwarves. Elves and dwarves never really get on. It's the same in Warhammer. They had a war of the beard, basically a war of honour. I won't go into all the history. If you want to know, buy the book, it's a great read. And another race they have a lot of history with, the Empire. Not many people actually realise High Elves taught Empire all the magic, all the 8 laws of magic. Teclis decided that if the Empire were ever going to be of any help in fighting against Chaos, they needed to be able to wield battle magic effectively. So Teclis went over with a couple of his mates and taught the best wizards that the Empire had the 8 laws of magic. Good decision, Teclis. It worked out in the end. So they've got a lot of history. It's really well fleshed out. If you are looking to be a fluffy wargamer and you like the history and the feel of a unit and how it looks on the battlefield and what it's supposed to do, High Elves aren't going to disappoint. They're very well fleshed out, well rounded. Lots of deep history to get involved in there, and you can theme a force from any of the different regions in High Elf society, any of the different provinces, if you will. So, but without further ado, we'll get into some of the army-wide special rules that High Elves get. I won't go into their magic or any of the unit-specific abilities. We'll get into those with each individual video. So, the first special rule, Valour of Ages. High Elves, not their mounts, so no dragons or horses, can re-roll any failed psychology tests when fighting a Dark Elf army. Excuse me. Good rule, no downside to it, really. It's a bit redundant now in 8th edition. You can do that basically with a battle standard bearer. Big guy in the middle of your army holding your army's banner, effectively. That allows your entire army within a certain range to re-roll all failed psychology tests, irrelevant of who you're playing. So even if you're not playing Dark Elves, it's a nice unit, a nice rule to have. If your battle standard bearer dies, you've still got it if you're fighting Dark Elves. Otherwise, meh. But fluffy and cool. Second special rule. This is the one that most people don't get on with. Speed of Azurian. Basically, all High Elves always strike first in close combat, regardless of any special weapons or abilities they've got that say they must strike last. Forget it, they strike first. Any spells your opponent casts on you that say you're striking last or you're initiative 1, you still strike first. Always strike first meets always strike last. Always strike first wins, basically. So High Elves with great weapons still always strike first. Great thing about always strike first in 8th edition, if you have higher, I think it's initiative, if you have a higher initiative than your opponent and you have always strike first, you strike first, obviously, and you get to re-roll any misses. So not only are you really fast with your weapon, you're so fast that they don't really have a chance to block or get out of the way, I think is how they're supposed to be playing that. So it really is powerful. The reason people don't like that rule is because it applies to everything in the High Elf army. I can agree with that. The rule is needed to cover patches because High Elves are damn expensive for what you get. At the end of the day, they're still toughness 3, all of them, even their Lord choices are toughness 3, and they have very little armour. So they die to a stiff breeze. It used to be that they'd rely on killing everything before it got to attack back. That doesn't happen in 8th edition anymore. If they get into a war of attrition, High Elves will die. Simple. They're about as tough as a goblin. So you can see where that's going to go. So yeah, they do need that rule, especially on things like Swordmasters. It fits, it makes sense. On units like Archers, I can agree why it might be a bit overkill. So, but that's your choice, open to debate, and that's what things like YouTube are for, really. We can discuss it. If you disagree, post a comment below. And the final special rule, which came out as an FAQ for this book for 8th edition, is Elite Army. Basically that says that they don't have to stick to the duplication kind of limit when they're picking a force. So most forces can have 2 rare choices that are the same. So 2, what's a rare choice? Hell Cannon. I think that's a rare choice for Chaos Warriors. Chaos Warriors can only have 2 of those. Even if they could afford more in their rare choice, they can't. High Elves are allowed to ignore that. So if they have the points for 10 Great Eagles, for example, they can take 10 Great Eagles. They don't have to bother about the duplication rule. Still have to stick to their 25% or 50% for special, that kind of thing, but they can ignore the duplication. So that's a quick overview of the 3 special rules that High Elves get, their brief history and why I collect them. So going forward we'll look at all the individual unit types and character choices, and I'll show you some models. So thanks for watching guys, hope you've enjoyed, and stay tuned for the first episode. Cheers, catch you later.